Hi guys, welcome back to our Globe interviews. I am the host Starlight. We are at the Barcelona Avalanche Summit. Today, we have a very special guest, Mark. Please welcome Mark.
Thank you so much, Starlight.
How are you, by the way?
I'm very well. Are you enjoying the summit?
Yeah, definitely. Can you share a little bit about your background and how you got into blockchain?
Yes, absolutely. So I don't come from a traditional sort of blockchain background. I'm not a programmer. I don't have any sort of formal qualifications in economics or finance. I was actually a organic synthetic chemist, a research chemist for about 14 years. Wow. So I did my Bachelor of Science with honors from Macquarie University in Sydney. I did my PhD at Melbourne University. I did my first postdoctoral stint at UCI, which is the University of California, Irvine. And I was a postdoctoral scholar there for 4 years, and I was lecturing for 2 of them. And then when I came back to Australia, I joined the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, which is the company that invented Wi-Fi, which I think is pretty interesting.
Wow.
They also invented stay-in contact lenses and a whole bunch of other technology. I'm very proud to have been working for them. And when I was there, I had a research grant from the German government to leave Australia and go and work in Berlin. And so when I did a lot of preparation work for that, and about 2 weeks before my flight was due to leave Australia to go to Germany, Australia locked down all of its borders, so I wasn't able to go. And so for most of 2020, I didn't have a lot of work to do. The city that I was living in actually broke the world record for the longest contiguous lockdown. So we had about 24 months of people not being able to go to work properly, not being able to leave their house. Work was very interrupted. And academia is, a lot like being a professional athlete in the sense that you're only as good as your last season, right? And so, having all of that work wiped out meant that it was going to be very difficult, or at least, more challenging, I would say, for me to sort of recover my career. And so I started looking for more ways that I could be productive in the world. And so during 2020, this was, the year of, DeFi summer. This was when, Uniswap was becoming very large and prominent. And so it was something that really caught my eye. And so I really started to study, how these blockchains work and how the applications, especially the decentralized finance applications on them work. And I started collaborating. I started meeting other people in the space and talking to them about ideas that we have and how to build better DeFi protocols. And eventually I became involved with the Bancor community. And I started, first I met the developers, I met the project founders, and eventually I started building, different, economic primitives with them. And then in January of 2021, the Bancor Foundation, which is a Swiss nonprofit that supports the Bancor Protocol, reached out to me with a contract saying that we want you to work full time. And so I left my job in science and I started working on blockchain. And that was about, a little over a year ago, and haven't looked back.
So you just joined this industry like 2 years.
Yeah, basically.
Wow. So I want to know what made you decided to leave your academia and dive into this crypto world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, as a research scientist, my ambition was always to be as useful as possible, to have the greatest possible positive impact on the rest of the world. And a lot of the things that I was studying were specifically, for that goal. Like my PhD, for example, I was studying tuberculosis. And trying to work out if there's a better way that we can manage this infectious agent. A lot of people don't realize, but tuberculosis infects 33% of all humans. So about a third of people are infected with this thing. And so, that seems like a good way to spend your time, right? Is to, address that particular problem. And then, when I was in the United States, I was looking at making, sensing technology, things like COVID rapid antigen tests and that kind of thing, cheaper and more reliable, right? And that's valuable, right? Giving people, especially physicians, the ability to diagnose their patients more accurately, more quickly, and less with less expenses, seemed like a good way to spend my time. And, when I started working for the Australian government, dealing with antimicrobial resistance stuff seemed like a good way to spend my time. So it's always been about how am I maximally beneficial, right, to others. And when I discovered blockchain, it was clear that was the way that I could be maximally beneficial. I think that this is the thing that has the greatest potential to impact the world in a positive way. And so it was very easy for me to flip from the type of in the weeds molecular sciences that I was doing that generally take a very, very long time to actually have a measurable impact on the world. Whereas in blockchain, you can move very, very quickly, right? And you can do things and talk with other people and create something and move move forward more quickly. So I think that was really what it was. I was getting very frustrated with the research bureaucracy that kind of restricts progress in universities and government agencies, and I am enjoying the open sandbox that blockchain gives me.
Yeah. So you think that the blockchain industry is more like opening to other people?
Yeah.
It's more like you can join the environment. It's not like education stuff.
Kind of. Yeah, it's more. And if you want to try something, like for example, in science, if I wanted to perform a certain experiment, I would need to make sure that I've got the funding from the correct people, and that my supervisor and their supervisor agree to let me do this experiment, and that there's a lot of paperwork and everything is kind of
too much process,
suffocating, under all the red tape. And cryptocurrency, for better or for worse, has no red tape, and sometimes that can be dangerous. But I think for the people that are positive actors, right, that are trying to be good actors, that lack of restriction means that we can advance things very, very quickly. So it's very efficient.
Yeah, it's all like you can do things all online.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, being a researcher in a totally different industry, like what is the difference of these two fields?
Yeah, for sure. It's I've been asked this question many times. But I think that the answer is always surprising, which is I don't think that it's very different.
Really?
For sure. I think that when you go through university as an undergraduate, you kind of have this idea that you're going to do something very specific, right? That you're being trained to do one thing well. Then in your PhD, that kind of goes out the window, and it becomes clear that you have to be an expert in everything, right? Or at least many things related to your field.
Yeah.
But then, your supervisor is going to give you a new project and you might not know anything about it. And you have to become an expert in the field very, very quickly so that you can design new experiments. And so I think that in a way, scientists, especially from, the postgraduate level, are very, very good at adapting to, a new environment and becoming sort of an expert in that field very quickly. It's kind of what we're trained to do. Now, having said all of that, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is going to enjoy or be good at blockchain or DeFi stuff. It just so happened that resonated with me, connected with me on a deeper level. I found it very interesting. But at some level, the Bancor Protocol and all of DeFi, it's really just a complex system, right? And in a way, that's what I've spent my whole, adult life studying, is how do things with lots of moving parts interact with each other, and how does it give rise to sort of emergent properties of that system? And so often, even with the Bancor Protocol specifically, and the sort of the design aspects that have gone into it, I often think about the way that liquidity moves between pools and between DeFi protocols as being sort of a chemical equilibrium, right? And we can actually apply some of the concepts from chemistry and physics to help describe some of these processes. So it's really, finance is kind of just an abstraction of a natural system. And I'm not the first to say this. The first chief economist of Bancor was Bernard Lieta, and he was the economist that invented the euro, right? And so he used to be our chief economist. And he also has written in his books that financial systems do behave like complex organisms. And so, yeah, I think that it was a much more natural transition than even I was expecting it to be. But now that I'm here, it just makes sense, right? It's a system that humans created.
Yeah.
And if humans are biological and chemical in nature, then it makes sense that the systems that they give rise to should also be governed by the same principles.
Yeah, that's true. What are the biggest challenge that you have been faced as the head of research in your team?
Yeah, for sure. I think that actually the biggest challenge I'd say is because I have sort of a public facing community role. I came from the community and I still maintain, a presence there. I have, a Twitter account that people talk to me on. My Telegram is always open. And some people, when they are feeling, depressed or sad because of the way that the cryptocurrency markets are changing,
Yeah.
I think that sometimes they want to find someone on whom they can sort of hang those insecurities. And so often, if something takes a turn for the worst, like in April of last year, remember when Ethereum had this giant crash, a lot of community members were getting very upset with, their cryptocurrency positions and their net valuations. And so during that time, there was a lot of animosity, I think, towards developers in the space, and that we're somehow responsible for, the price depreciation. And so I'd say that that's the most difficult thing, is that being a prominent personality means that you are also sort of the target of, some of that, some of that hostility that cryptocurrency communities are known for. And I think that, I'm not the only person to have experienced it. This isn't a poor me, something like that. But, I do think that, for example, the reason for Andre Cronje's departure from cryptocurrency and DeFi recently was also due to things like stress and, the sort of hostility that you can be subject to. So I think that is easily the hardest thing. Other than that, though, everything is great. I really love everyone that I work with. All of my colleagues are terrific. And most of the community is extremely positive. And so I do really enjoy where I am, and there's nothing about it that I would change, other than for the fact that, there is this human instability, that people are going to have. And if they need someone to take it out on, then sometimes I have to be the punching bag for it. And that's okay. I accept it. But it is the hardest thing.
Yeah. So do you think this industry is welcome to all the people, all the young people, and like old people, or the people even don't know much
absolutely
technology about this field?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say that blockchain is like the most meritocratic industry that I've ever seen, right? And even, that should mean a lot coming from a prior academic, because universities pride themselves, or at least they espouse this idea that if you work hard and if you are smart and if you do the work and get good grades, then you can be successful. But that's a lie, right? It's a huge lie.
Yeah.
But in blockchain, actually, if you are clever and if you are clever and are careful, and if you care for others, and if you're doing something good, you actually can be successful. And it's not guaranteed, right? It's got that similar flavor of randomness that academia has, but it's much more meritocratic. If it doesn't matter how old you are or from what background. I've met people in the blockchain space that are digital art developers. I've met people that are, environmentalists. I've met people that are fashion designers. And they're all working in blockchain because they've given up on, that old, they've given up on their old industries, basically. They think that the corruption and the centralization, I guess, of how those industries operate have made it so that they can't succeed. Whereas in blockchain, all of that's pulled out, and it's really up to you and your community to determine how successful you are. And so with that said, if you have an ambition to join blockchain, I do think that you should strongly consider it. You would be surprised how easy it is to meet with other like-minded people that might see value in what it is that you're trying to create. And all you really need is a Discord server to get started. And that's a hugely, self-empowering aspect to everything that this industry stands for. And I do recommend that people give it a shot. Don't worry if you're not a programmer. I'm not a programmer, right? Don't worry if you don't have huge amounts of wealth. I still have a huge student debt, from when I was a PhD student myself. There's really no reason to not get started.
Do you have any advice for the people they want to get involved in this industry? Any advice or any book you can recommend?
Yeah, so if you do want to get involved in the industry, I do think, even though it's not a prerequisite, I do think that having a little bit of programming background is helpful, right? So if you've never coded before, probably just learn to code a little, right? You don't have to be great. When no one's looking, you're not going to be a full stack developer in like a year or 2 years or something. There are people that have been programming their whole lives, and you're probably not going to be as good as them, by this time next year or even 2 years from now. But that's okay, because most times you only need to be good enough so that you can show someone what it is you're trying to do, right? Yeah. And then that contract engineer can look at what you're doing and think, oh yeah, that's fine. Let me arrange that, make it better for you, right? So I'd say having a tiny bit, just the minimum amount of coding experience is a good place to start. It doesn't have to be Solidity. It doesn't have to be smart contract language. It can be something like Python, right? Any kind of machine language that you can use to create a program that performs certain functions. Really good place to start. But it's not necessary. But I think that if I had any one piece of advice, it would be at least knowing how to read code or how to think about code is definitely probably the most obvious way that you can better prepare yourself for a career in blockchain.
At the end of 2020, Bancor launched an experimental new model for decentralized liquidity called single-side staking. Can you share more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's actually two components to what made this model so experimental. One was that, yes, like you said, it's single-sided liquidity, but it's also liquidity that's protected from impermanent loss. So let's delve a little bit into what these two different things mean. Yeah. So Bancor was the first AMM, right? So we actually invented the pool token concept, the bonding curve concept, and the liquidity pool concept. And so these really are the three technological components that sort of underpin pretty much all of DeFi. And Bancor is an old project, right? We were there when Maker was getting started, right? We were one of the first DeFi protocols with a cross-chain deployment. The first side chain or competing layer one narrative was many years ago now, right? We were on a blockchain called EOS, right, which was very popular, especially in China, and I think it still is. There's still a thriving community there. But yeah, so we've kind of done all this stuff before. At the moment, what we're going through is kind of round two of DeFi, and I think people don't know that. So with those primitives, what we discovered was this aspect to how we were asking users to provide liquidity. And we can talk about that because this is where single-sided and impermanent loss protection comes from. So I want you to imagine that if we are going to set up our own physical AMM, right? So not on a blockchain, but like in our room. And so what we might have is like two buckets, and we might put like American dollars in one of those buckets and Australian dollars in the other bucket. And I'm going to tell you that the rule is you can take out as many dollars from either bucket as you want, so long as you contribute enough dollars to the other bucket such that the amount of dollars between the two buckets follows some rule, right? And we call that constant product right now. And that means that if you come in, you can say, okay, fine, I would like to buy one Australian dollar. And so I'll put some American dollars in this bucket and take out some Australian dollars from this bucket. So this is called two-sided liquidity, right? If you want to be a liquidity provider with me, I'm going to say, fine, here are the buckets, but you need to add both American dollars and Australian dollars, right? If you only have American dollars, can't provide liquidity. If you've only got Australian dollars, can't provide liquidity. You need both, right? So you would have to go somewhere else or trade with me in order to get the amounts that you want so that you can provide liquidity. So with Bancor version 2.1, we said, you don't have to do that. If you only have American dollars, we will let you provide liquidity just with American dollars. If you only have Australian dollars, You can provide liquidity just with Australian dollars. And the reason why we can do that is because the BNT token is the universal numeraire across the protocol. It's used in every single pool. It's a part of every single trade. And so when you are trading between American dollars and Australian dollars, for example, it first trades through BNT as the conduit, and that allows for constant pricing between all of these assets to occur. So that single-sided staking mechanism is because the protocol provides its own BNT. So there was a sort of a meme recently of this idea of protocol-owned liquidity that was popularized by some of the DeFi 2.0 projects. But Bancor actually had that all the way back in October of 2020. And so the protocol owns most of the BNT side of the pool. And that's really helpful for a number of reasons, including the single-sided liquidity provision. The other thing that the protocol does is it ensures the value of your deposit. So if you contribute, what's your favorite cryptocurrency right now? If you had to choose one.
Doggy.
Yeah. Okay. So if you had Doggy Coin and you wanted to contribute liquidity with that, let's say that you had 100 Doggy Coins and you wanted to contribute liquidity with those. The idea is that you're going to be making money over time, right? So if you want to withdraw your liquidity later, the expectation that you have is that you're going to have more Doggy Coins, like maybe 101 Doggy Coins or 105 or 110 Doggy Coins. But what people often find, especially in protocols like Uniswap and SushiSwap and Kyber and all of these other AMM derivatives, is that after they've provided liquidity, later when they want to withdraw, even though they have earned fees and things, that they actually have less tokens than what they started with, right? Or they have less of the more valuable token than what they started with. And so overall, their portfolio is worth less than when they thought. And that effect is called impermanent loss. And it's quasi-predictable, it's measurable, and you can insure it. And so what Bancor does is it insures that loss. So if you have, if you provided 100 Doggy Coins, and then later you go to withdraw, but there's less Doggy Coins there than there was, the Bancor protocol will refund you the difference plus the fees that you were supposed to earn. And that's another aspect of the impermanent loss protection. Sorry, that's another aspect of the single-sided liquidity provision. So these two features really are born from each other. You can't have one without the other. Both of them are required. And it's unique to Bancor Protocol, and it's going to get even better with our version 3 release.
Wow. So it's such a really great project.
Yeah, thank you.
And how many users you have?
Yeah, so so for version 2.1, the question that you asked about, the version that we released in 2020, it's the TVL, the total number of users that we can have, is deliberately restricted, right? And the reason is that we wanted to study this insurance mechanism more thoroughly before we allowed the protocol to get very, very large, right? And so we wanted some time to see it operate, see how users use it, what are the economic ramifications, what are the financial ramifications, and also what's lacking, what can we do to make the protocol easier to use, right, or more intuitive. So a lot of the things that we had in version 2.1 where there were problems are things like non-fungibility, non-composability. There were time limits and other things. And so we've spent all of the last year sort of understanding those problems. And now that we're launching version 3, all of those problems are gone. So the liquidity caps, which is what's kept the protocol TVL small, and also the number of users small, those are going away. Oh. And so we can have unlimited liquidity provided on Bancor version 3. The insurance had a time vesting component. That's also going away. Now we offer you impermanent loss protection from the instant that you provide liquidity. So I think that the number of users that we have is measured in the thousands to probably 10,000. It's generally the users that we've attracted tend to be very high net worth individuals. So it's people providing very large amounts of liquidity. So we have fewer users. But with version 3, because the gas expenses are going to be coming down, we're expecting that we can now better cater to users with less capital, to contribute. And so we're expecting the number of users to go up. We're expecting the TVL to go up as well.
Yeah, I feel like the first stage for you guys is like you do the quantity, like you do the dissertation, and then you have to choose the methodologies, and you do the quantity stuff, like to make sure you collect the data.
Yeah, sort of. It's kind of like imagine that someone is going to paint your house, for example, right? And you're not sure about the color yet. You're still making up your mind, right? You think you want the walls to be like off-white, but you're not sure precisely which color. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the best approach? Do we paint the whole house one color and then decide we don't like this color? Or do we paint just a little bit of the wall first and then go, maybe not this, right? This is kind of the approach that Bancor has, is that rather than just do everything and then make a decision as to whether or not it made sense, do it just a little bit first, right?
Yeah.
And then, give it some time, make sure that we understand it, and then scale up. Because I think that one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of DeFi protocols have made, especially over the last 12 months, is rushing into things and trying to get as much users and as much TVL locked as possible, and not realizing that there is, some bug in their contracts, or that someone that works for them is a scam artist that worked for, some rugged exchange several years ago or something. There's been a lot of drama from people just not taking their time to get it right. And I think that, I hope one day that Bancor will be sort of, honored for the way that we've approached things historically, right? Of not being a part of the hype machine and not, rushing into things and breaking everything, but taking a very slow and considered approach and trying to keep our users and the protocol safe in the process.
There's a long-term collaboration between Bancor and Nexus Mutual. They joined 30+ DAO adopting Bancor-style treasury management solution. It was announced that Nexus Mutual made the single largest DAO treasury deposit on Bancor. What makes Bancor so appealing?
So I think that over the course of the last 12 months, many token projects have kind of wised up to the problem of on-chain liquidity and what it means to them. And so many DAOs, in order to support speculation, for traders, and also to provide a gateway for investors, they have been seeking out ways to create and sustain liquidity on chain. So I think one of the things that makes Bancor so appealing for DAOs is that they can provide liquidity single-sided without having to swap some of their token supply for something else. And this is extremely important when you're first getting started. So imagine, for example, if we were to start Starlight token, okay? And we're going to make 1 billion of these tokens, and it's going to have some utility, or some people are going to want to buy and sell these things. So how do we create liquidity for it? Your first instinct might be, okay, maybe we can provide liquidity on SushiSwap. Okay, but that means that we need to buy a certain amount of Ethereum tokens to establish liquidity on the other side of the pool. And maybe that's not so bad. If you have a lot of Ethereum tokens already, then you can do this and you can bootstrap your own liquidity and everything's going to be fine. But what if you don't have a lot of Ethereum already? Well, then maybe we'll have to do a token raise. And ask early investors, seed investors, to buy Starlight tokens in exchange for Ethereum, and then we'll use some of that Ethereum to establish liquidity. It's also not perfect, because when you establish that liquidity, your early investors, if they're not appropriately locked, can easily use that liquidity pool that you've established to exploit new entrants into the marketplace, right, before the token becomes perfectly distributed. Answer that Bancor provides to this problem is you don't need to provide the other side of the pool. You don't need to do the token raise. You can just talk to us. And if the DAO permits it, we will allow you to establish liquidity against our own BNT supply. And then your DAO is providing just that token. It doesn't have to sell half of that token in order to buy another token. And this saves it both from from market dysfunction problems, but it also protects it from, for example, regulatory and legal problems. So in many cases, some DAOs are legally exposed in what they can actually do with their DAO treasuries. And selling off a very large amount of the treasury just to establish liquidity might mean that you go to jail, right? Not all DAOs can do this. And so for Bancor, when they come to Bancor, it makes it very, very easy to establish that partnership. Specifically with things like Nexus Mutual, I think that because it's an insurance protocol, right? Because the members of that community are already very well educated and they know about, DeFi risk, they know about impermanent loss. They want a protocol that they believe in, right? That they think is trustworthy, and they want a protocol that is giving them that assurance that they won't lose any value, right? And so that impermanent loss protection that Bancor provides allows them to both have liquidity with their NXM token, and it means that the DAO isn't experiencing a loss as a result of providing that liquidity. And it's a community that understands both of those problems extremely well. So I think that Bancor was very, very attractive because the NXM community knows what the disadvantages are of using these, older models. And so they see Bancor as a more sophisticated, more pragmatic approach. And we've whitelisted their token, and so it's an easy match. Honestly, these collaborations make themselves.
Are there any things or updated we can look for in the protocol's upcoming new version of Bancor 3? Because I have checked your website, the timeline of the Bancor 3. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, of course. So, earlier in the discussion, we spoke about a couple of the things that are coming out. So instant and permanent loss protection, unlimited, liquidity capacity. But there are a couple of other things that we haven't spoken about, things like auto compounding rewards. So we're supporting a liquidity mining system that other token projects can interact with to create rewards. So, a liquidity incentive for their own community. That is available and that their community can get the benefits of without having to pay gas, right? So when they're which on Ethereum is a really big deal, right? The gas cost on Ethereum can be huge. So to use a DeFi protocol like Bancor on Ethereum and get all of these rewards claimed without having to spend gas is, I think, a huge deal. And we call it auto compounding because it's automatically accrued to your position, right? It's not something that you need to interact with the contract in order to claim. It's just already there. So all you need to do is have the pool token and you're already liquidity mining. This is super important for a couple of different reasons. One is that the rewards budget that the token community has provided is immediately used as liquidity, right? So it's already a part of the system and it's already tradable even before the users have claimed it, which is a huge advantage. And again, stems from our single-sided liquidity model. So that's a pretty big advantage. And there are some other, more let's say technical advances that we might say for another conversation. But essentially, all of this has been in preparation for about 12 months, right? This has been a very, very big protocol upgrade. There isn't a single line of code from the previous version that is being reused in the new version. It's all brand new, and so that meant that there was a lot of drafting. There were a lot of incomplete versions of the contracts that were experimented with first before we arrived at the final version. And then, of course, there's the auditing process, right, where we engage with external auditors to make sure that the code is robust. So we've just recently come to the end of the first audit, right? We're actually expecting it to end in just a few days. In fact, after this call, I have to go and talk to them again. But yeah, that's actually concluding. And depending on how the next few days go, we're actually expecting to be able to release Bancor version 3 in a restricted capacity as early as something like April 4th, right? So first week of April is, I'm guessing April 4th, but I think it'll be sometime in the first week of April. And this will be what we call an open beta. And that means that anyone can interact with it. The contracts will be deployed. We're going to be, again, careful about making sure that we don't, grow the protocol too quickly. So it's going to have a restricted growth profile, so that we can have some time to see how users interact with it, what the MEV bots are trying to do with it, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's coming out first week of April. Now we're proposing that beta test period will last something like 3 or 4 weeks. And then at the end of that observation period, we will pull out all of the restrictions, launch the website, and then everyone can start interacting with Bancor 3 immediately. So I'm expecting all of that from a user-facing perspective with regards to, the front end, the marketing campaign, everything that we have planned. That should probably be expected sometime towards the end of April, probably early May.
Yeah. I know you have intended to the Barcelona Avalanche Summit for 2022, and you are the one of best excellent speaker as well.
Thank you so much.
I want to know why is DeFi? Why did you get so excited about DeFi?
So I think what is most appealing to me about DeFi is that kind of this revolutionary feeling, right? Like everyone that I speak to, they're not necessarily just in it because they think that they can make lots of money really quickly. Obviously there are those people that are there just for that. But I think that if you really get into it and you meet some of the long-term community members and you sort of, especially some of the token founders, the project founders from the 2017, 2018 era, you really get the feeling that everyone in this, sort of Web3, space, this industry, they're really trying to create something transformational, right? The best projects that I talk to all seem to have this, this quiet ambition to be the thing that changes the world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's very intoxicating, to be around this kind of, this revolutionary mentality.
It's going viral.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I think that, the cryptocurrency and blockchains have been dubbed the fourth industrial revolution already. And I think that it could be true, right? And I'm in DeFi because I think of all of the use cases that I've seen for blockchains, finance is the one that it's the most obvious, right? It's the one that's the most corrupt. It's the one that is the most hurt by centralization. And it's the one that, affects the most people. And so if blockchain has, a priority for how it can show itself to the world as being something that has a purpose, that we're not just inventing blockchains for their own sake, I think it has to be DeFi, right? DeFi is its best foot. And I am honored to be one of the people that's here developing that part of it.
What we can really expect from Web3, DeFi, and the Internet of the future?
Yeah, hard to say. And it depends on who you ask. I'd say that if you speak to any of the metaverse projects, right, they're going to give you an answer about, how people live and how culture is going to be, digitized, and maybe there's a good argument for that. We've certainly seen the NFT scene has exploded, and just last week the Bored Apes project released their ape coin and everything else, and it does look like this stuff has legitimate momentum. I was previously skeptical as to whether or not the NFT thing would have long-term appeal. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe it will, right? I'm not saying that I said that it wouldn't be. I just wasn't convinced that it was. But now it looks like that might be, something that's here forever. And so having said that, maybe the metaverse people are right. Maybe, the future of the internet is something like a different type of social media that we can't even that we can't even really fathom yet, where people might have their whole digital identity and everything that's important to them and everything that is culturally relevant, the way that they experience other people's culture, the way they converse with each other, have meetings and careers could be digitized. And that's it's weird, right? And I don't know if that will happen, but that might be one of the answers that you'd be getting. For me, and you have to be aware that I am always skeptical, I'm always more reserved. So I'm always hopeful. So for me, I would hope that DeFi could, dethrone the old financial world, and that we don't necessarily need, banks and financial institutions anymore, and that we will have, robust enough protocols that are immutable and that are, secure. And that do what everyone expects them to do, and that when those things are running, the old systems will just be antiquated. But am I expecting that to happen? I want it to happen, and I think if we work hard enough, we can have it. But am I expecting it in my lifetime? I don't know. But I think that it's moving that way. I think it will feel a lot like that trickle of the internet, right? When I was a kid, I had a dial-up modem, right? 512 kbs. And, if you wanted to play StarCraft with your friends, you'd have to literally dial their phone number into the computer and play with them. And it was terrible. It had a very bad connection. It would drop out all the time. But when you were there, people were saying, can you imagine one day when the internet is fast enough? Like, this could be a global network of players playing StarCraft online, and that you could have competitions, and maybe it will be more popular than a football game. Mm-hmm. And in my lifetime, that's already happened, right? We've gone from dial-up internet connections to, the StarCraft World Series or whatever it's called. I haven't watched these things in a long time, but it has come so far so quickly that if you were alive in the 90s, looking at what the internet looked like then, you wouldn't have believed it. And it's happened. I think blockchains are going to go through that same transition, right? When you're looking at it right now, we're on that, that dial-up modem phase, right? Where, transactions cost too much. They're too slow. And, sometimes they fail. Just like the dial-up modem was unreliable. But the people that are studying this and working on it, they see that potential for one day to have this globally connected network that is, likely to, to depose all of the decentralized influences that kind of plague, financial sector. So that's what I'm hoping for. And in my most optimistic answer, that's what I would say that you can expect, but we need to be patient, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It took a long time for broadband internet to get here. But I think that's my answer, is it's coming. We can hope for, blockchains to sort of rule the world. But we're going to have to wait for it.
Yeah, but I feel like it's always the positive way.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So what is the next step for you and Bancor? Any achievement or any goals?
Yeah, of course. So we're laser focused on version 3. So the features that we spoke about in this interview, and features that we haven't spoken about but we've made publicly available. Mm-hmm. This is all part of what we call the Dawn release of Bancor. So the Bancor version 3 upgrade is so large that it can't be done all at once. Right? So we've broken it up into 3 smaller releases. And so the first one is the one that's coming up in April. And while we are, attracting more users and growing the TVL of the product, that's when we'll be, working on the next part of the upgrade. Mm-hmm. And so far, everything that we have planned for those 2 parts is secret, right? So I can't tell you about those right now, but I can tell you that I have my work cut out for me. I'm going to be very, very busy, developing these concepts and introducing these new features into the protocol. And I'm so excited to have that. Mm-hmm. But in the interim, right, not just new features, we also are going to go cross-chain, right? So at the moment, Bancor is only deployed on Ethereum. But I'm here in lovely Barcelona at the Avalanche Summit because our community is thinking about launching the protocol on Avalanche. I also had a podcast last night with Polygon because we might want to go there. So my goals, at least in the very near term, are get Bancor version 3 out, get users using it. and then start to look at cross-chain deployments. And then I need to focus on the really important stuff, which is what we're calling the sunrise and daylight releases for Bancor version 3, which are going to be huge, but it's going to, it's going to take me, it's a lot of work still, but we'll get there. Like we said before, right? Things are, if you're patient and you work hard, you can make these things.
Thanks for watching this episode. If you enjoyed the content, please don't forget like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for our guest, Mark. And it's been our pleasure to speaking with you. And see you guys in next time. Bye.